Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So, in keeping with the theme of like our top 5 series, we've done top 5 primers, top 5 mascaras. Today I want to talk about brushes. And it's absolutely impossible to pick like a top 5 brushes when it comes to brushes, because we use more than 5 brushes, or I at least use more than 5 brushes to do my makeup. So what I decided to do was pick my top favorite brushes in each category, so like foundation, blush, concealer, bronzer, that kind of stuff. So if you guys are interested to see what my favorite brushes are that I use currently in my routine, then you are in the right place. Just keep on watching. So let's start with foundation. My top 2 favorite foundation brushes is one from e.l.f. and one from Morphe. Now this one from e.l.f. I've had for years, and I've had it for so long that it literally just says e.l.f. on the handle and nothing else on here. But I will put down here in the little runner across the bottom the closest thing that I can find to this and what this brush is, because I know they still carry it, they just call it something different. But I love this brush. It's my absolute favorite. I go for this one before anything else to buff in my foundation. It does an amazing job. My second one, when I have something a little thicker that I need to really buff into my pores, I use this denser flat top buffing brush, and this is the Y6 from Morphe, and this brush actually is a really good brush and it does a really good job. For the most part, I'm very picky about brushes from Morphe, which ones I use and which ones I don't, because I've had some shedding issues with them. But this brush has been a ride or die for me for quite a while. It does a really good job, and this is absolutely something I would recommend to you guys. Moving on to concealer. Most of the time I use a smaller beauty sponge for concealer, but there are those concealers that I do have to buff in, especially the thicker ones like the Amazing Concealer, the Shape Tape on the rare times that I use it. And when I need to buff, I reach for this brush. One end is for concealer, the other end is for foundation. Now I don't use the foundation brush, I just find it's a little too soft for me. But the concealer end of this brush is outstanding. It's the perfect density, it's the perfect size at the tip, and it just does an amazing job, and I love this to buff out concealer. A good second brush to apply concealer with is the Real Techniques Instapop Shade Brush. Now this is a brush that's used typically, well, they think it should be used to shade your eyes with, but because of the angle of this brush, and the Instapops all have this angle where it's like flat up against here and it kind of slants back at an angle like that, and it gives you a very wide space right here to work with, and it really is perfect at laying down concealer. It's just a really good shape for it. So I do like the shade brush from the Instapop collection by Real Techniques to use as a concealer brush as well. And the last one that I really like is also from Real Techniques. This is technically their deluxe crease brush out of the I think it's like, I don't know, like this was in a kit, and they have like this iridescent, all of the ones in the kit have this like iridescent shine to it, and this is amazing at buffing in concealer. It's the perfect size and it does a really good job, so I would absolutely recommend this one as well. Next is an all over powder brush. Bar none, this is my favorite all over powder brush right now, and it is the It Cosmetics, and I believe this is just called their jumbo powder brush. It's huge, it covers a great space on the face when you're buffing out your powder, and it just does an amazing job at powder application. I reach for this before I reach for anything else. I was struggling there for a minute to try and find a really nice big powder brush, but this is definitely it. It has a really nice domed top. It just buffs your powder in perfectly, and you couldn't ask for anything else out of a powder brush. So this is my powder brush recommendation. Alright, next let's talk about setting the under eye area. So I have one that I absolutely reach for, but it's quite expensive, and that's the Smashbox, the angled powder brush. And obviously you can see this nice beautiful angle that it has here. It just does an amazing job at setting powder in the under eye area. It actually pushes up the lid when you press down, and it actually gets into all of the creases in the under eye area, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love this brush. I love that it has the beveled parts here where you can kind of hold your fingers in there, and this is my favorite under eye setting powder brush. They are quite expensive though, so if you want a couple of backups, Wet n Wild actually has one in their Pro line that came out, the one that came out in the set, the silver set, and this is a great under eye setting brush. I've actually used this a couple of times in a pinch. It fits really nicely. It's very soft and does a great job at application of product. Another one is by Real Techniques, kind of exactly the same thing from Wet n Wild, almost identically. This is from their Royal Blue line from Real Techniques. Great under eye setting powder brush. So if this is definitely a lot cheaper than this, but these two are really good for under eye setting. And then of course Real Techniques also has an under eye setting powder brush. Now this one is actually called the setting brush, and it has a beautiful shape as well, and it does really good at getting underneath your eye when it comes to powder. So this is another one that's great at setting under eye powder. So these four are my under eye setting powders, with this one being my favorite. Alright, next let's talk about blush. This is by far my favorite blush brush. It has been my favorite blush brush since the beginning of time, and this is the Real Techniques blush brush. This does such a great job at blending out blush on your cheek, and it's because of the hairs and the way that it's cut in this ball shape. It's amazing when it comes to buffing out blush. I think this is the best blush brush on the market. A good runner-up for me also came out of that Wet n Wild Pro brush set that I showed you guys earlier, and that is this brush here from them. It's not labeled or called anything, but it's in that set. And I know when I want a denser application of blush and I just want it to be just a little heavier and not as buffed out, I'll reach for this, and it does an excellent job at blush application. So another brush out of that kit that's absolutely Erica approved. Alright, next we're going to talk about contour, and by far for me, Becca has a brush that's called the One Perfecting Brush, and I have it in the gold version. And when it comes to contour, this brush is amazing. It can be a little expensive for one brush, but I will tell you this. Sometimes when you're contouring, you tend to maybe get a little out of the lines, so to say, and you'll end up with contour in a much wider spot than what you intended it to be. Contour is when you really keep a defined contour here. It's not like bronzing where you really kind of warm up the face. Contour, you really want to put shadows into the side of the face, so it's a very precise application with minimal blending for a cheekbone look. This is an excellent brush for that specific purpose, and as you can tell, that's what I use it for. The reason I love this brush for that is because of the way it sits. It keeps the product nice and controlled. It keeps it very tight where it should be, and I will put my contour on here. I literally will just go in here and do a wiggle, and it will place it right where I need it, and then I'll just go and do this, and it honestly will just blend it out beautifully. This is a natural hair brush. It's fantastic quality, and for contour, you really cannot beat this brush. Now, sometimes after I do that, I will reach for the Real Techniques contour brush if I just want to really get in there and kind of buff it out. Real Techniques has a great contour brush, and this one is actually called the contour brush. This works fantastic. When it comes to nose contour, funny enough, Flower Beauty's eyeshadow brush, and this is it, and it's a perfect shape for nose contour. It's got this nice wide kind of top that has a tapered tip to it, and it's very oval shape. So when it comes to contouring the nose, especially my nose shape, this is a fantastic brush to do that with. So the Flower Beauty eyeshadow brush is actually a phenomenal nose contour brush. All right, so bronzer. Now, bronzer you really do want to buff out. You really want that to be big buffs of color to really warm up the face. And for me, Bare Minerals Full Flawless Face Brush is the best brush for bronzer like ever. I have been loving this brush for bronzer. It has this beautiful natural hair tip. It's very soft, but the way that it blends is fantastic. It just does an amazing job at warming up the face. It is fantastic. This is probably by far the best bronzing brush that I have used recently, and I've used the $90 Marc Jacobs bronzer. I've used a lot of brushes in my day when it comes to finding a good bronzing brush, and this one is absolutely fantastic. So I would definitely recommend this one to you guys if you haven't checked it out already. Highlight. So depending on how you want to apply your highlight, I have two different brushes. The first one is by Sephora, and it is their number 93. And this is anything that you want to dust on that you want just a really feather light application. So again, this is the number 93 by Sephora. It's just kind of this really long, soft brush. This is for very light sweeps of color. So this is perfect to just put a little highlight here. I love the tip on it because it does come to such a tip. It's perfect for right down the bridge of the nose. I love it for that. But it also is really good for the cheek area as well. And again, that's the number 93, and it's called the Pro Featherweight Blender from Sephora. If you want a heavier laydown of color, this is the MAC 133 Cheek Brush. It's got a very soft, natural brush tip, and this will lay it on a little heavier. And so if I want a little bit of a heavier highlight, I'll actually use this brush. It also has a very nice tip at the top, so it does make it quite easy just to go down the bridge of the nose as well as sweeping across the high points of your cheeks and your Cupid's bow. This is another great brush by MAC, and this is my kind of backup highlighting brush. Alright guys, so now we are down to the eye brushes. My favorite. Alright, so I'm going to start with just an all over good color blending brush. So the Morphe M510. This is a fantastic brush if you just want a nice big brush to kind of put all over color all over the lid, or if you want a really wide transition color placement. Anytime I want to put down a transition color or a color that's all over the lid, I always reach for the Morphe M510. It is a fantastic brush. I absolutely love the bristles on this brush. I love the shape of it. I haven't had any issues with this particular brush, which is why I really, really like it. But this is my favorite transition color brush by far. It just fits into the socket beautifully, and it's a nice wide blending brush, which is great for that transition. Another alternate for that is the MAC 224. This is also one of my favorite transition color brushes. It also is just a nice wide blender that's great at transition colors. It has a beautiful tapered tip, and this is an excellent brush. Next, when it comes to crease brushes and really kind of getting into that crease and doing some smaller work where you want to get really in there and some tight blending going on, I reach for the Smith 232. This is an amazing crease brush, you guys. This brush is absolutely fantastic. It is a natural bristled head, and it really is amazing. This is one of the best blending brushes that I own, especially when it comes to like the outer V that I do. It blends out beautifully. It's a nice firm pointed tip blender, and this is an excellent quality brush. And all of Smith's brushes are amazing, but this one in particular I am in love with. And kind of along those same lines, this is the Haki Hodo J5533, and it's very similar in that this is more of a pointed tip for getting really in there, and this is a flat tip, so you still want to stay in the crease but maybe buff it out just a little wider. You'll see Haki Hodos throughout my eye collection, and that's because Haki Hodo is my favorite eye blending brush as a brand. They are quality brushes. The craftsmanship behind these brushes, the artistry in these brushes is bar none. They are made in Japan. They are hand made. They are the best quality brushes in the world. I love them, and they're not that expensive. One brush I think costs anywhere from like $15 to $20, and I know that does sound expensive for one brush when you can get some Wet n Wild entire sets for $20, but I would much rather invest $20 into one brush that I know I'm going to have for years and years, as opposed to a couple of really cheap brushes that are going to fall apart and need to be replaced in a year or so anyway. So that's just kind of my thinking about it. But anyway, this is the Haki Hodo Crease Blender, and it is an amazing, amazing brush. The next two brushes are brushes that I use when I really want to just blow out my crease and do a lot of beautiful, big, wide blending in the crease. The first one is the Haki Hodo J5522, and the difference in the 5522 and the 5533 is that this is a flat top and this is a nice pointed blender. And this Haki Hodo blending brush is my favorite blending brush out of my entire collection. And this is what I use to just really stick in the crease and go back and forward with, and really just blow out a beautiful blend on your crease. Again, the craftsmanship behind the Haki Hodo brushes are second to none. They're absolutely beautiful, beautiful brushes. This is probably my favorite. My second favorite would be the Wayne Goss number 3 brush. This is his eye blender. It basically does the same thing that the Haki Hodo does. So if this one is like getting a bath and drying, then this is always my backup. It does the same thing, and it does just an amazing job at it as well. Anything by Wayne Goss is going to be fantastic, and I love this blender brush. Next, we're going to talk about brushes that are not the round kind of buff out blender brushes, but these are like the flat, like oval brushes. These are good for doing like that shading work where you want to do like that outer V, really pack on color but still blend and keep it on the outside. This is a great style of brush, and the MAC 217 is a classic. This is probably the first eyeshadow brush that most girls had out there, and this is a staple, I think, in anyone's collection. It's just a classic. I think every girl probably has this in her vanity. But a great dupe for this is the Real Techniques base shadow brush. Same concept, very flat, nice tapered tip. It is their oval shader, and this is actually a beautiful blending brush. I reach for this a lot. It does make a really good look on the eye. I absolutely love this brush. And then of course Haki Hodo has a version of this brush, which is their J5523 brush, and this is my favorite. But this is like the same version of the MAC 217. They basically function the same way, do the same thing, whereas this is kind of a more scratchier hair. This is a much softer, more luxurious hair, and I like the blending out of the Haki Hodo a lot better, and it feels 10 times better on the eye as well. Alright guys, so packing on that shimmer color, or packing on any color that you got to spray Fix Plus on it and pack it on, for me that's going to be the Contour Shadow Brush by Smashbox. I don't know what it's made for or what a contour shadow brush is intended on doing, but that's what I do with it. Look at how thin it is. It's very thin, but it's very flat, and it does a great job at packing on that color that you need to pack on the lid. It picks up product great. It lays it down beautifully. This is by far my favorite brush, and I don't have any other that work as good as this. So if I don't have this one laying around, then I'm in trouble. But I love this brush for packing on lid color. And then I have 3 smaller kind of detail brushes. These are like the pencil brushes that you would use like underneath the lash line or the inner corner to do any kind of that detail work. So the first one is actually quickly become my favorite pencil brush, and this is actually Morphe, and it came out of that set that I got that came in this nice little gift bag, and there was like 6 eye brushes in it. It was called the Eye Slay kit, and this was the pencil brush that was part of that kit, and it actually is my favorite brush out of that entire kit. It is the perfect density. It doesn't collapse. It holds up great under a lot of washing, which is hard to find out of a pencil brush because they're so small. They do tend to fall apart very easily, and this brush has really held up there for me, held its shape nicely. It's a beautiful feeling brush, and it really does a great job at under eye buffing or anything that you typically would utilize a pencil brush for. My second favorite is by Makeup Geek, and they call it their defined crease brush for really small kind of detailed crease work, but I don't ever do anything in my crease that requires this small kind of attention to detail, but this works great when I need to smoke out a lower lash line. It's basically like having a blending brush for your lower lash line. It's so small that when you put it on that lower lash line and you just start to buff, it blends the color out beautifully, and it will really just kind of smoke out that lower lash line, and it does an amazing job at that. So this is the defined crease brush by Makeup Geek, and I love it for under the eye. The next brush again came out of that Wet n Wild Pro brush kit. Now the difference I think between this and any other pencil brush is that this is a very short, fat, and round pencil brush, or what they would consider to be a pencil brush. So for that reason, I really like it here, right here on the inner corner, because of that kind of really hard, it's very soft, but it's very dense, so it doesn't collapse on you. It maintains its shape while you use it, and I really need that when I'm applying color to the inner corner of my eye, and I really like this brush for that. I also like this brush for highlighting the brow bone right underneath here, because again, it doesn't collapse, so it doesn't spread the color out. It keeps it very tight underneath the eyebrow, and it places it right where I need it to go. And then if I just need to buff it a little bit, it does that as well. So this was another home run for me out of that Wet n Wild Pro brush kit. And then of course the MAC 212 is the tight line brush. It's my absolute favorite. This is when you really want to get up there right on that lash line, or if you want a tight line up here underneath your lashes, or if you want to do some line work up here on the top of your lashes. This is my favorite tight line brush in the world, and again, that is the MAC 212. My favorite spoolie and angled brush comes from Makeup Forever. So this is the Makeup Forever, it's their professional line, and I don't even really know the name of it. I think it is the 274 brush, and it has a very small angled tip, and then on the end it has a spoolie. This is my absolute favorite spoolie for using on my eyebrows or my lashes or whatever I need to use a spoolie for. And then the angled tip is one of my absolute favorite, and one of the main reasons is because I like the length of it. A lot of times when you get a spoolie brush, you end up with something like this, where you have something very small. Look at the comparison in size. So you're all scrunched up and you feel like you're working really tightly, whereas this is like a normal brush, and it gives you that space between your face and your hand, so you don't feel as crowded. You actually have more control over your strokes. They are more fluid and then end up being a lot more natural. So I love this brush for that reason, because it is a very long angled brush and a very long spoolie. So for that reason, this is my favorite. And again, that is the Makeup Forever 274 brush. Alright guys, and last but not least, everybody needs one of these. I've seen so many girls with like safety pins trying to really get in there and separate their lashes, and it just scares me to death because we don't need to have anything sharp near our eyeballs. Just get a basic, I think this was like $1 from Morphe. It's like a Morphe B22, and it has a comb on one end so that you can really get in there and separate your lashes, and then it has a brush on another for, you know, eyebrow work or whatever else you need it for. But I think every girl needs to get their hands on one. It doesn't cost very much. It's usually around $1 or $2, and it keeps those safety pins out of your eyeballs. So everybody invest in a good lash brush. Alright guys, that is it for me for my favorites right now on brushes and what brushes are in my collection that I love. Listen, feel free to leave in the comments down below what your favorite brushes are. I'd love to hear. We'll get a conversation going. I know everybody has different ones and I'm always looking to try new ones. As a matter of fact, I have the new Wet n Wild ones on the way, so I'll do a review on those and let you guys know how those work. Other than that, guys, thanks a lot for spending so much time with me and listening to me run on about my top favorite brushes. If you have any questions for me about any of these brushes that we mentioned here, just leave it down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week.